This episode is brought to you by The Guarantors. Chasing down residents who don't pay their rent is taxing enough. Did you know you could offset the risk of renter default? Meet The Guarantors. They'll requalify your applicants and insure their rent. If the resident doesn't pay, you still get paid. Visit theguarantors.com/multifamily today.
Welcome to Decoding Multifamily, a video podcast that explores different aspects of multifamily operations and takes a deep dive into the important topics that affect the apartment industry. Watch as co-hosts Suzanne Hobson and Paul Marks engage with multifamily thought leaders, rising multifamily superstars, and apartment industry icons. Decoding is defined as the process of extracting meaningful and useful information. So watch closely as we begin Decoding Multifamily.
Welcome to Decoding Multifamily, powered by the Multifamily Media Network. And the Multifamily Media Network is a free media platform on a mission to inspire the next generation of multifamily leaders. With 11 different weekly podcasts from a roster of hosts who are not only multifamily experts, but also industry icons, we bring you the latest insights, trends, and success stories from the multifamily world. Stay informed about each unique podcast and catch up on the latest episodes by visiting multifamilymedianetwork.com. Plus, don't miss out on our educational and inspiring multifamily blogs. Tune in, get inspired, and transform your multifamily journey with us. So, we have a great episode today. Again, I'm Paul Mark and have my fantastic co-host Suzanne Hobson with us. And we have a wonderful guest Suzanne, why don't you introduce our guest?
All right. Well, thank you, Paul, and welcome Anne-Marie Bomba. Very nice to meet you. I have obviously heard so many wonderful things about you, and you have an extensive career in our industry. So I think everyone's going to be very interested in hearing more about you and how you tick. That's really what our show is all about. And so really looking forward to digging in with you today. But just a little bit about you. You are currently at Strategic Properties as the CEO. Just amazing that you are a chief executive officer in our industry, and can't wait to dig in more about how you got there. But it looks like in your career that spanned over 35 years, you have managed diverse portfolios with construction, new renovations, repositionings, stabilized properties in regions all over the country. And your experience also includes asset management. So I'd love to hear more about that, especially as it relates to institutional clients. And you also had direct supervision of both conventional and affordable communities. So just a huge and wide, diverse experience that you have. And so just really happy to have you here.
So much. I appreciate the invitation to join you. I am an avid listener, so it's exciting to be a part of your show.
Great. Paul, I have to do something, which I never do, but I have to actually shut my window. There is a weed whacker so I can't hear anything. I apologize. Hopefully they can clip that out. I'll be right back.
No problem.
Okay.
Just 1 second and we will. That's what the joy of working from home is all about.
Absolutely.
Made a note of the time, so when we edit this out, we still have all of our time. Okay.
All right. Thanks for that.
Go ahead. Go ahead and just pick it up from there, Suzanne.
Sounds good.
Ask the first question.
Yeah. So Anne-Marie, I'd like to ask you a question about how you actually got started in the industry. Yeah.
Well, like many others in the multifamily industry, my journey started happenstance and necessity, right? Like it was certainly not intentional. I was touring a property with a property manager one day looking for a place to live, and we just got to talking, and she seemed very interested and just kind of picked up on all the questions I was asking. And she's like, "You're very intuitive. Would you like a job?" So it's like, sure, absolutely. So she hired me on the spot, and I became the part-time leasing person of this community and ended up moving in and learning about the industry. Right away, I learned that I got an apartment discount and I had a flexible schedule and I had the opportunity to make something called commissions. So it's fantastic.
That's awesome. And yes, you are right. I think Paul and I were talking about this just this morning with a group of people about how the majority of the people that we talked to started just the same way. And you touched on something that, resonated or just, sparked a question or maybe even a comment, which is it seemed a lot easier to just get a job back then. Like now you really are interviewed. Back then it was like, yeah, you're pretty good at this. You want to try it out? Right?
Yes. I remember, I think I had 3 or 4 jobs before I actually had an interview. Like it was just, you just talk to people and they're like, oh, you're hired. Can you start on Friday? Oh, by the way, here's the keys. And you really don't need to know anything else other than here's a property map and just lease whatever you can.
I know. So simple back then, I guess is what I'm saying. Yeah. There was a big trust factor too. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. In hindsight, that probably was not the smartest moves.
Yeah, I think probably what you're doing now is a little more complex. You have a lot more going on than you did back then. But how do you think multifamily, the landscape has evolved over the years? And would the second question or part to that is, how do you see it shaping up in the future?
Wow. Well, I can say, over the last 3 decades, it has changed a lot. And most of it was the evolution of technology and new tools that were introduced. When I started in the industry, I think we were just basically considered key keepers or property managers and really didn't have much to do other than show an apartment, do a lease, and move somebody in. Back in the day when I started on site, everything was manual processes. We wrote everything down. We were, sticky queens. We had all of our sticky notes. There was no key control. And, I remember being excited when I got hired at a property that literally had a fax machine because I thought it was just the newest, latest, and greatest technology. So imagine when computers were introduced, that was a big deal. So just seeing it, how it was from when I started to how it's evolved over 30 years, all the technology that's come into play that's given us incredible tools and analytics and software and things that we can make better decisions and evolve from key keepers to really being pivotal and vital for our clients and the success of their assets and what we manage today. And so I think with the introduction of AI and continued technology advances, I can't wait to see what the next 30 years bring.
Yeah, you mentioned AI. Are you currently using any type of AI in your business now? Or do you see that being something you'll be integrating in the future?
Yes, absolutely. Again, we've started out with just kind of chat bots and then AI answering questions on tours or leasing questions. We're introducing more and more of it and really just kind of trying to understand how we can partner technology with our people, with our centralized team, and really just make it all the most cost efficient, effective tools, collaboration going forward within our business model.
Yeah, and to your point there on your business model, and you mentioned your centralized services, which I imagine is your corporate office. Um, Obviously, that's a big buzzword these days. Centralization, specialization. You're trying to morph it into a lot of different things, but I think that there's this trend to really fine tune those individual positions so that people can be really good at 3 things instead of 12. How do you see that really being factored into your business and what you're doing?
Right. Well, I can tell you one of the exciting things and what sets SP Strategic Properties apart is that we have a centralized team that was essentially started prior to adding on myself and several boots on the ground operators. We started with a centralized team. They've been in place for 12 years. And most of our team members have been with us from 8 to 10 years. So it's a long-term tenure. It's made up of various departments, and each department is subject matter experts and driven by KPIs. And I'll give you an example of that. We have a leasing department that handles all of our leasing calls for all of our properties. They set up the tours through variation of technology and, call center. Well, we call it a call center, but it's really our team. They work for us. They answer the calls, they set the tours, they send the prospects to the properties, the managers tour them, and then they follow up. The central team follows up. So you've got your leasing, we've got a marketing team that also goes and scrubs our websites, makes sure specials and pricing is updated. We have a maintenance team that supports our properties. We've got our customer service team. So each one is a driver to make our business more effective with time and cost. So it's high touch and high technology.
I like that. That's like a big header to a presentation. I don't know. That's really good. Yeah. High touch, high technology. Yeah. So that's really kind of, I know what's happening with your company. If we could just pivot a little bit, dig into you, Anne-Marie, and what makes everything that you've brought to what you're doing, not only in the past, but, moving forward. Let's maybe dig in a little bit more about you and your journey. I know at the beginning, 35 years ago, very similar tenure here in the business. How did you find it in terms of, challenges or things that, barriers to entry, whether it was promoted, getting promoted or, I mean, did you find any like barriers to that or difficulty in that?
Really, I think I was pretty fortunate in the way I fell into the business at the time I fell into the business, because when I did enter, it was the 80s. It was crisis mode. It was an industry that was not really well sought by a lot of people looking for opportunities. So I think the time that I entered, I was just super fortunate. And really, as you make a name for yourself, word gets around. And so you get recruited organically and you have
Mhm.
opportunities organically. I think in today's world, that's very different. So I didn't see those types of challenges. It was just going through the various cycles. But again, when I say at the time I entered, I was fortunate, I've seen at least 3 downturns in my career. So I think when you start with that and you build a foundation of operating in that environment, you learn how to pivot and navigate through the upside and the downsides. So
Yeah. So the word that comes to mind is flexibility. Like it seems like you're able to adapt and adjust very, very well. How do you get your team around you to do that?
it's 100% leading by example. It's being the leader that we all wanted to have. Is surrounding myself by people that are way smarter and have different skill sets, building a team that's very diverse, so that we can all lean into each other and really just gain strength. And we're all going to come from a situation from different lenses. So just having that team, building that network, and working with peers, leaning in to see what their experience has been. And I think that's one thing that I've learned through my career is it is so pivotal to have those industry leaders and peers and network.
It sounds like right people, right seat is very important in your filter for figuring out how you're going to get to the goal. And so around that people orientation, which I think is great. What else have you seen maybe in it, that's a requirement of our leaders that are emerging? and sort of that middle management, what do they really have to be able to do? I know we said pivot and be flexible, but what else are you looking for in a regional manager, that middle manager role, as an example?
Yeah, so I'm looking for people that really want to, um, they need to stay up to date on the emerging trends, the market conditions. They've got to have great communication skills because they're working with their site teams, their, lenders, clients, a whole diverse um, gamut of individuals. So they need to be able to have that clear, precise communication. They need to be, um, you know, flexible with understanding what's going on in the markets. They need to understand and know how to support their teams. But even in today's environment, it's not a one size fits all. So really getting to know and their team members and how to support them where they need to be supported.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And, I know that there's a lot of conversation right now going around about how to really support our middle management because there hasn't been real specific training or focus for that, that middle management where you go from property manager to the regional role and then regional up to perhaps, director level role. Sometimes it happens by osmosis. Sometimes you work in an organization that has a very clear path and clear training. But most of the time, I've found that that's not the case. They're sort of the forgotten strata. What is your take on that?
I absolutely believe that. And I think that's why you've got to surround yourself with people that have different experiences because a lot of it is the hands-on training. It's learning organically through different situations. It's having people that have gone through those experiences before to lean into. So you've got to have that diversity, but you also need to have somebody who is focused on gaining diverse experience as well, because they have to be relatable and they have to be able to be genuine when they're dealing with those situations.
Yeah, that authenticity that you're speaking to,
Sure.
I think, yeah, is very critical. We hear that all the time now. That's there's so much more social media and ability to get out there, and then you become part of the crowd. And so, how do you really differentiate yourself in your own job, and with your prospect, even with your team? And so, what makes you better, or why would someone want to do business with you, or why would someone want to work for you? And being able to really be able to speak to that powerfully, I think, is part of that authenticity. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And transparency and accountability. You've got to be
Mm,
transparent in everything you do, and you've got to be authentic and hold yourself accountable.
yeah, I love that. um I wish we would have met earlier. Yeah, great team, great team. So, what on accountability? This is sort of a loaded question. I know I'm going a bit off script here, Anne, but Anne-Marie, I told you I might. Um, on accountability, I know that seems like an important value for you, and it is for many because that's how you get it done, right? And you get it done well. How do you hold people accountable? What does that look like?
Well, it's being clear in expectations, and then it's measuring. So you give them clear direction, tell them what you need, let them figure out how they handle that situation, right? Because there's not one way to you know make things happen. They've got to have some individuality in how they lead or how they perform, and then just really circling back, and talking through it. um, it needs to be one of those situations where goodness, I feel like if you're clear on your expectations and you have that follow up, even if they don't necessarily meet your expectations, talk about what that situation looked like. Um, what did we learn from it if we didn't exactly meet the target? And then what can we do better next time? And so use it as a learning opportunity, and then also create a safe place for people to make mistakes. If there's an error, I want my team to feel good and comfortable about raising their hand and saying, hey, that didn't work out the way I thought. So let's talk through it. Here's what I learned, and we can grow together.
We will get right back to the episode after a word from our sponsor. Attention, multifamily pros, if you haven't heard of the Guarantors, take note. They provide insurance products that ensure you will ultimately and simply collect what's owed if a resident stops paying. Widen your applicant pool, turn conditionally approved and denied applicants into residents, and protect against the financial threat of renter fraud, all at no cost to the operator. With awesome customer service and a complete risk mitigation suite, it's a no-brainer. Visit theguarantors.com/multifamily and speak to their team today.
I love that. When I talk to other people about accountability specifically, a lot of people have different views on it, depending on, who you're talking to. There's the carrot and the stick accountability person. There's the KPI person. You really talked about the safe space, that where people can make mistakes. And that, I think, lends to the trust, and people being able to be held accountable, because they know it's going to be okay, that they're, not necessarily going to lose their job. And I think that also creates an environment where people will try more things, maybe take more calculated risks, and that pushes the organization forward too. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm really fascinated by the role that you're in now and what you're bringing to the table there in your everyday. Can you give us an idea about what a CEO of your magnitude does on the daily?
Many different hats. And it's great. And that's why I love this industry, because you're wearing many hats at all times. And my day to day is just, I like to spend intentional time with the leadership team and with different directors, just so that I can get the pulse of what support that they need. And then it's just checking in with the clients and making sure that we've got, constant communication and just building and fostering those relationships. To me, that's the most important thing about what we do. And then just obviously networking, meeting new potential clients, as well as vendor partners for different solutions that we're trying to solve, and lots of travel. And I really enjoy spending time on the sites. That's my roots, and I like to be face to face with our teams, because I want them to know that there is obviously growth potential in our industry. They can see that firsthand, and that they feel supported. We're not a top-down company. We are a collaborative company, and they need to feel that support. And I think when you spend that time with them, and they get to see you on a more personal level and a professional level, you just gain more respect, and build better relationships that way.
Yeah. Yeah. So much in what you just said there. Not a top down, but a collaborative company. That really resonates. And I think that's the way that people coming into our industry think, right? They don't really think about the traditional model anymore, because people are working differently.
Absolutely.
Especially the younger generations coming into the space. I think, they have some opinions about the top, right?
They
Yeah.
absolutely do.
Yeah. And that disconnect. And it sounds like you're really solving for that by getting out, out into the field. And we talk about that all the time, the boots on the ground, and really being able to get the pulse of what is happening on site. What are you seeing are some of the challenges that are now that maybe haven't been as prominent or prevalent in the past for our site teams? What do you think the challenges are for them?
Well, I do believe that there's a lot more expectations on what they can do and achieve in a day, in a week. I feel like there's a lot more responsibilities for these managers. And I feel like our residents are also changing too. So in some situations, we have, renters by choice, and then we have renters by need. And so those are very different resident expectations and demands on the teams. As well as, we are coming out of the pandemic that everybody talks about, but there was a lot of people that really reevaluated, I think, some life choices, whether they lost a job or, even if they maintain their job. Is this really where I want to be? Am I is this the culture that I want? Does my company care about me? So they're changing jobs, they're making all of these life changes, and our managers are, kind of with these residents during the best and worst days of their lives. And so we've really got to be sensitive to that. And, so I think there's a lot of demands and a lot of things that I don't know that we had to deal with 30 years ago when we were on site.
Yeah, I felt like there was a buffer of, you just had your own little business and there wasn't a whole lot of interaction unless you had a big CapEx program going on or the owner was coming into town. Everyone would
Yeah.
scurry and get the deal ready, looking good. But yeah, you're right. Now it's much more complex, and the level of technology that we require our site teams and field teams to utilize and understand and use can be really complicated and a burden at times. Do you find that as well? Do you get that kind of feedback? Because I hear it.
Well, absolutely. And that goes back to not being a top down. We really want to have our teams as part of those processes, because if we don't have their buy-in, it just really becomes more challenging to roll out any type of initiative as well. And we make decisions with the information that we have, but really it's the site teams that we're supporting. And so if that is not solving the issue that we think it's supposed to solve, that's the best way to find out is to have them as part of that process. But you're right, there's new technology, there's new programs, there's new we've got renters insurance, and then we've got pet screening, and we've got a lot of these different processes now that we're putting on our site teams. And then you've got clients where we've got all the technology that's coming, and centralization. So they're thinking that they can maybe staff the properties with less quantity than what we were used to before. So I think there's a lot more expectations of what they can achieve in a day. And so it puts a lot of stress and demand on them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, that's something I was talking to another colleague the other day about, how do you really pitch centralization to clients, third party operators or owners who are looking at the math, and it needs to work, right? And so how do you really do that? And one of the things that she said was, I never even bring up that we're going to shorten the staff. I just bring up what the value will be to the bottom line, because our operations will be better. I think to that point, though, we need to show that in the math. It's almost like that's your audience. So
Right.
have you cracked that code yet, Anne-Marie? You don't have to share if you don't want to share, but it would be so good to see that, that someone's working on that, right? Like, because I think it's missing still. I'm not finding a lot of data that really is a direct line to your bottom line.
Well, while we would all love to say that we've got the secret sauce, I think, I think the return is, what is that customer experience? How can we reduce turnover? And that's what hits your bottom line, right? But it's not necessarily, we're requiring higher salaries because we want the most qualified candidates, and we're all kind of pulling from the same pool of talent. And then now we've got all the technology, which comes at a cost as well. And so, all of that adds up, and it does become more expensive to operate. Not only that, but then you've got your taxes and your insurance and all of those wonderful uncontrollable things. So in that sense, it all impacts the bottom line. But what we have to do is show that we are outperforming competition. We are reducing the turnover because we're building that sense of community and the relationships with the residents. So that's where the bottom line, and that's where you see your returns. But to quantify that is a little difficult at times.
Yes. Yeah. Finding that myself. I know it's there. It's just hard, because in this too, clients look at different things, right? They have different concerns and needs regarding the assets or what their personal goals are. It's really interesting. I think the other thing you talked about was retention. And I think the retention of staff also falls into line with being centralized. I mean, do you see any correlation with that too? Like the team turnover?
Well, we've been fortunate because our average tenure is about 8.5 years for our team today, which
wow,
that is kind of unheard of.
Yes.
But I think that goes back to why we make everything a people first. This is a relationship business, and so we spend a ton of time really supporting our existing team, because that turnover is really, at the end of the day, what impacts that NOI, right? Because you're constantly in a state of change and redoing and retraining and all of the things. So resident retention, and then just how our team with the central team supports our on-site team. I think the advantage to that is they take away a lot of the administrative burden, so that our managers really can get to know the residents, build a relationship, work with our vendor partners, and manage their community. So I think it just takes that extra stress off of reporting and all of the, what I call background noise. It's necessary, but it's kind of the background noise, if you will, and really just gives them the opportunity to focus on what's most important.
Suzanne, we have about 8 minutes left in this episode, and I just want to ask one question, Anne-Marie. And Suzanne and I have had this discussion with other guests on the show, and you mentioned that when you started in the 80s, what was going on in the business, and so you started basically in a downturn of the industry, and the industry's cyclical. We went through downturn 10, 12 years ago, and now we're in a situation again where things have slowed down. You have people, well, most people, I don't know if you do, but most companies have people that have been working there only in the good times, and they don't really see what it's like to go through a downturn, and they don't even understand concessions in some cases. Talk a little bit about that and how you keep everybody calm when we have something like this.
Well, I think the fact that I can speak genuinely to historics and what I personally have experienced through my career in the past and what I've seen, and kind of get them comfortable with the back to basics, and here's what the new norm looks like. And you can still be very successful, whether from an ownership side or a operator side. In these, you just have to look for those opportunities and know that we're tightening up some bootstraps in places. We really need to be intentional on where we're spending our resources, and we will all get through this. This too shall pass. But the back to the basics approach, and just really digging in and looking at everything, and just like I said, tightening up, and we know that this has happened before, and we will all get through it, but we've got to be very realistic and transparent about where we are today and where we're going.
Yeah, no, that was a great.
Got about 6 minutes left.
Yeah, well, I would like to know, because most successful people have some absolutes. Like, they are very adamant about certain things in their life, whether it's their core values or whatever those things are. What are you, I don't even know if unbudgeable, we can't budge you on this. Like, what is one of those truths for you, Anne-Marie?
It's got to be transparency and accountability.
Yeah.
We can get through any situation as long as we're transparent and we hold ourselves accountable.
Can you share with our audience, and this is sort of a parting question that we love to ask, and it's one that the audience really appreciates as well. What would you tell someone that's coming into the industry now about how to be a CEO like you one day? What would they have to do to do that, or be?
So I would say you've got to continue to educate yourself and be subject matter experts on market conditions, and relationship building and really look at things from an investor or an owner's, point of view. Because at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're managing somebody else's asset and we're trying to follow their business model. So how we can pivot and be flexible, hold ourselves accountable and build those relationships, that matters. And so as you're successful, as an operator and as a leader, and then you look for those opportunities that, where you can lead and move into that role. If that's where you want to go, right? There's so many different opportunities in this multifamily industry. So, it's very rewarding and very challenging. And it is an honor to be able to provide housing and to provide financial returns for our clients. So
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. How are we doing on time, Paul?
We got time for one more question, and then I want Anne-Marie, please share with our listeners before we get off the best way to reach out to you if someone wanted to reach out to you and so forth. But I got time for another question, Suzanne.
Okay. Well, I have one. I was going to maybe ask it in a different order, but I didn't think we had enough time. So was there a time in your career where you had a situation that you had to handle that was difficult, like really difficult, maybe that contributed to some road rash along the way, experience that you learned from that you'd be willing to share with, it's kind of like, don't do this because this will happen.
I will say, do not allow toxic people into your organization. And if they present themselves, make those changes quickly, because that can cause the most damage to any organization. You really need to have like-minded professionals and your cheerleaders and people that see the positives and it can move things forward. Toxic people will sink any ship.
Yeah. Obviously, you have those people because they wouldn't be there for 8.5 years on average.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Anne-Marie, tell everybody a little bit about how they could reach you and what you've got coming up in the future with the company.
Wonderful. Yeah. So our website is strategicproperties.com. My office number is 786-245-7518. We are looking to grow our organization. We've spent quite a bit of time building that foundation and ready for growth in various markets, and really looking forward to getting into running more affordable assets in the near future. So that is kind of the direction that we're one of the new services that we will be adding this year.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being on. It's always great to have a chance to decode someone who's got decades of experience to share with the people that are up and coming in the industry. And we look forward to having you back again sometime soon. Look forward to seeing you in Philadelphia at Apartmentalize coming up in a few weeks. It's about a month away now, I guess. So anyway, we will be back next time with another episode of Decoding Multifamily, brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network. Go to multifamilymedianetwork.com to find out more about not only this podcast, but other great podcasts by our host of other great podcasters who are all multifamily insiders as well as multifamily icons. So multifamilymedianetwork.com. Thanks again, Anne-Marie. Suzanne, be back soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you both.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Decoding Multifamily video podcast, and please tune in to future episodes. If you would like to subscribe to our weekly newsletter or discuss being a podcast guest on Decoding Multifamily, please go to multifamilymedianetwork.com. Thank you for watching Decoding Multifamily.